Hi there, this is Chuck with Pocket Snakes again. I'm plating up the last of this 32 plate or 4 to 32 plate whip. We're at 32 plate. You might notice down here that I've got some barges cement, and this is a nice trick to kind of keep all the strands, because you're going to build this up anyway and put a heel knot for the whip. You can barge cement it and help lock all that paracord together before you look at putting the overlay, and it's still pinned. So I braided off the end of the bump. This is the core, and I've pinned it in place, but also to make it a little easier to maintain, I've went ahead and put some barges cement, and I will probably put some golf grip tape on here as I get to the bottom. Now, if I can keep the camera from turning off, which every 25-30 minutes it keeps overheating. So I'm going to go ahead and plate some more, talk about some different tips and tricks. I think everybody that makes whips does so in a little bit different methodology. They've always got different ways of doing things. Sometimes that's because somebody told them that was the way to do it. And I didn't have anybody telling me what the one way was, and part of the fun of this for me is exploring different ways of doing things. But I'm fascinated by tension. Figuring out how to get the tension to all lock together and create compression and tension in an object. And it requires time and attention. So I don't plate as fast as some people. A lot of whips are, especially handled whips, like stock whips, the thongs are sometimes pretty loose. But on small snake whips, I like to have it so that it has quite a bit of tension and compression to start with. This particular whip, somebody wanted a super heavy, so this one has 4 ounces of tungsten shot. Really fine. I think it's probably number 7.5 or 8. Tungsten, little BBs. Spent a couple $100 on a couple pounds of shot for doing super heavies, but for short whips, part of what makes them or helps them move the way you want when you flick them is to have enough mass. This is more of a mass whip since the handle is pretty non-existent. Normally I shot load these whips with a couple ounces, 1.5, 2 ounces of steel. So it more than doubles the weight. It's kind of strange how the BB air space, the space between the shot, makes a huge difference. If it was a solid chunk of whatever material it is without air space between the shot, it would be a certain density per cc. You could calculate it easily. But tungsten is even heavier than lead, and I don't like having lead around, so I don't use lead. I use steel. If I have to lead shot load something, I've got number 12 lead, but I don't keep it in the house, and I try not to use it except when somebody absolutely insists on having a lead shot loaded whip. I usually try and encase it in a coating. So mostly I use steel. This is the second tungsten shot loaded whip I've made. Because I refused to spend a couple $100 on a certain amount of it. But since people wanted it, it's like, okay. It's not unobtainium, it's, you can get it. So I'm platting these at about 45 or 50 pounds at this point. Probably more tension than I need in this, but when you roll it, you lose some of the tension to compression. It's when the core below it squeezes the air out. The whip will loosen up a little bit, and then the braided pattern will tighten up in different ways over time. And I do minimal rolling of the whips. A lot of times I'll just take them down. I'd rather they get thrown and settle in than spend a lot of time rolling them, trying to make them round. Because I like the oval nature. Since everything in the foundational core is pressed flat material, it lends itself to an oval build. And that oval shape creates a natural double bias where the whip wants to bend along a plane. And I rather like that effect. So I keep everything in alignment. So hopefully with any luck here, I can plate all the way to the end of this, because it's got about 12 inches to go, but it's going to take me 30 or 40 minutes probably at 32 plate. But this is kind of my Zen activity. This is what I do to relax. You may notice I've got a healing little cut from a scalpel on my thumb. That was where I was shaping the leather buildup on the last whip. And when cutting through leather, anything that'll cut through leather will cut through your skin a whole lot easier. And the scalpel slipped. And fortunately, I did not bleed on the whip. I got my thumb out of the way, put a Band-Aid on it. And that was 2 days ago. But if you work with razor blades and are focused on something else, the razor blade will let you know it should be the priority that you're paying attention to by poking you and saying, hey, notice that the intersecting stitch line is nice and straight on this, and it's lined up with the stitch line of the whipmaker cord belly below it. So I'm going to encourage all you to build some 275 paracord whips. See what you think of them. Feel free to message me, and all over the place. Pocket Snakes, pretty much everywhere. Pocket Snakes whips on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. And you can email me at pocketsnakes@pocketsnakes. There's only one of me here. I will never have anybody working for me because I could never get them to do to do it exactly the way I think is right. So I'm happy to teach other people how I go about things and share my methods, some of which are a little more crazy and precise than other people's. If you want to take all the time to do it the way I'm doing it, feel free. And if you figure out faster methods to get the same results, please let me know. So I always like interacting with people, although I'd rather talk on the phone than chat on text, because the easiest way for me to be misunderstood is for me to text a message. When you're dropping strands, you have to take all the time to snug the strands down and center the ends, or fray check it with fabric check, stitch them down or tack them down in some way to keep the fuzz from coming as the end of it frays. This method avoids that because there's literally the part that would fray ends up off the end down here, and you seal it up so that it stays, and then you come back and cut it off, and I weld it with a torch, so literally all the strands end up being just how you want them, and there are no frayed ends. Or frayed knots. The dogs are letting me know that there's a jet going over. They're always talking in the background. This is about my maximum plaiting speed for 32. I'm in hopes that I can get most of this done before the camera decides it has heated too much. I mean, I love this little camera because I can put it right, like right now, this camera is about 9 inches from this core that I'm overlaying. And it's got a wide angle lens. It's a GoPro Mini 11. I purchased this because I wanted to strap it to my head, but then every time I turn my head, you end up showing every corner of a room and everything you may or may not want to see. And trying to micro edit something you've recorded as one scene for an extended period of time, you go to record with the GoPro and I turn on the camera and I don't have anybody helping me with draw focus or anything like that. It just, the GoPro runs, and then I can go back and frame the majority of it and say, okay, export this. And I just let it go, mistakes and all, because I've been doing this for a number of years, and I still make mistakes. Try and learn from them, but I make more mistakes than the average person, because I try more things than the average person. But I'm plugging along. So we'll try and figure out what I'll is up here. And I may end up pausing A and B and C and D. One interesting thing with this camera is in 4K mode anyway. Every 25 minutes or so it chops and cuts to another video, which is why the videos tend to be 25 minutes long instead of longer. Okay, so we're getting down to the last 4 inches here, and right at the hilt, and I'm so there's 4 inches. We're at 5 inches. So I'm going to bring the black strand up to the top and anchor it. And then I'm going to grab the golf grip tape and see if I can. So the golf grip tape is a tape used for adhesing golf grips to shafts. It's a 3M, was a 3M product. Now there's some generics available. But it's a double-sided adhesive tape stuck to Teflon paper. And it can be loosened with a little bit of mineral spirits. So it allows you to remove it with a little bit of mineral spirits if you need to remove a handle from a golf grip, from a golf shaft. But I found it really useful for tacking down things, especially in an area that's going to be super stiff, like in this area. I found it super useful. So, okay. And I'm going to tension this down and put a pin in it. And I'm pulling these at the same angle that I platted them. I'm not pulling them more horizontal, I'm pulling them along the same path. I try and do that when I tension, otherwise you'll create a twist. People ask, doesn't this hurt your hands? I'm like, yes it does. And then you end up with funny calluses that only whipmakers seem to get right on the bottoms of your pinkies. The bottom edge of your pinkies, you get these pretty good sized calluses. And you discover things about yourself, like your left hand and your right hand are two totally different strengths. And things that don't bother your right hand bother your left hand. Like, well, that's interesting. But when you're pulling these and seating them with 50 pounds of tension or so, it bites into the bottom of your finger with 275 paracord. And if you let it rub too much, it'll chew off the callus you've got, and if you don't catch it in time, suddenly you'll start bleeding because you'll break through the skin. And that would be a disaster on a white whip. Actually, on any whip, but it'd be a disaster on a white one because it just looked so horrible on camera. Okay, so I'm going to grab some golf grip tape. This is a spool, what I was talking about. This is, I guess, from Crest Golf. I don't know, I bought 3 spools and I'm still using the first one. And this is interesting stuff. So This will just make it ever so slightly tacky and add more friction on the end of it. You can see the nature of that. I'm going to raise it up a little bit here. Alrighty, you can already see how it sticks to it. And I don't use a lot of tapes, but this one's neat because if it breaks, it kind of balls up. And the goal is for it to hold it while we're building the hilt more than anything else, building up the ball and to keep the tension locked in so it doesn't change between when I take it down from the hook and when I weld all that tension in place. So, is it perfect? I don't think that I found anything perfect. This is just one thing you can do. And you can actually drag the cord through this tape as you go. But it doesn't have any substance. It's literally a layer of adhesive. So it's almost like a gel adhesive. It's pretty cool. I always like to hear from other whip makers. I've never really met that many of them. Part of that is I've bumped into people that make whips because they're in town or I'm in town when I'm traveling. It's